Okay, so she signed for Funny Girl. Of course she's going to be signed for Funny Girl. But she was also signed for 2 other musicals before Funny Girl even came out, which were On a Clear Day, You Can See Forever, which was directed by Vincent Minnelli, Judy Garland's second husband. All right, Funny Girl was very successful, of course. I saw it 7 times one summer in Vermont. I was at a music camp. I was quite young, but I was in this music camp at the University of Vermont in Burlington. And every week we go to the movie theater. But for most of the whole time I was there, Funny Girl played the whole time. So I saw it a lot. And all of us never got bored with it. It was just wonderful. Okay, then Hello, Dolly comes out. Now, of course, she's 27 years old playing Dolly Levi, who's supposed to be a widow, who had a wonderful relationship with her first husband, Ephraim. You know, this is the thing. And, you know, Hello, Dolly is meeting Horace Vandergelder, which was played by Walter Matthau in the film. You know, she's supposed to be a little older. Well, how can she already have a great life, you know, with her first husband? She's only 27 years old. You know, had a few years of mourning, and then she's out in the, out dating again, for lack of a better word. And before the parade passes by, one of the songs which kind of explains that it's time to get back in the race again. All right, the movie was not successful. In fact, it was real. It wasn't as bad as the critics said, but the critics, most people, except the Barbra Streisand fans, were very angry that Barbra Streisand was signed for it. It should have been Carol Channing. Just like Mame should have been Angela Lansbury, not Lucille Ball. Lucy, who I love, couldn't have been worse in Mame. That was a fantastic show. One of the best shows I ever saw in the 60s. That one really... When you see these really talented people live, you know, you guys who see concerts, it's really something to be present at somebody, not watching them in the movies or listening to them. Seeing Angela Lansbury in Mame was really something else. Plus, you know, she was this actor in the movies forever. She never sang. And even in the Harvey Girls she sang, but it wasn't her voice. Okay, so Barbra does, all right, Hello, Dolly. Ironically, that word again, Barbra Streisand and Walter Matthau are really the only great things that seem to come from that movie now. The great thing about watching musicals is they're dated when they're filmed. So it's not like you can see something from the 60s and watch it now and go, oh my God, it's so old-fashioned. No, it was old-fashioned then. Hello, Dolly has held up really well. Barbra Streisand's performance, of all things, really held up. But it's not all that odd. Why should it really hold up? Well, she is like a Jewish Yentl. And that is what Dolly Levi was. Now, we didn't know that when she was 27 years old. We knew she was Jewish, but her Jewishness wasn't played up. Well, you know, in Funny Girl, I'm sorry, it was played up. But of course, she's not Jewish in Hello, Dolly, so it wasn't played up in that. Well, she's playing like a Jewish Yentl, so it's, you know, in a sense, I mean, they basically only signed her because she was a super-duper star back then, and to do Hello, Dolly, the movie, which was such a successful Broadway show, they were only going to get named people, just like Mame. Angela Lansbury was not a proven movie star at that time. Okay, and then her third picture is On a Clear Day, You Can See Forever. Now, mind you, the soundtracks of all 3 of the films, Funny Girl, Hello, Dolly, and On a Clear Day, are great. Oh my God. Before we get to On a Clear Day, what Barbra Streisand does to So Long, Dearie. Listen to Bette Midler's rendition of So Long, Dearie in the show, and then listen to Barbra Streisand's, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so then she does On a Clear Day. Mind you, this is her 3rd movie she's doing, and none of her films have been released at this point. Vincent Minnelli, Judy Garland's second husband, and I mean Vincent Minnelli, you know, Gigi, American in Paris. Vincent Minnelli was a very famous director who it seemed like the perfect choice to do On a Clear Day, but he was, I hate to say this, but he's a little past his prime. I mean, he was basically past his prime. The scenes of Barbra filmed before in the reincarnation are very good, but the direction of her contemporary scenes, she's a little too shrilly. It really didn't quite work, and there's no chemistry between Yves Montand and Barbra Streisand. I mean, it's almost like he really didn't like her. And Walter Matthau and Barbra Streisand did not get along on Hello, Dolly. There are very, very famous stories about a big fight that Walter Matthau has since apologized about and Barbra Streisand has discussed. But they did not get along during the filming. Less is spoken about how well Yves Montand and Barbra got along in On a Clear Day, but there's no chemistry whatsoever. But I'll tell you, listen to her do, oh God, What Did I Have That I Don't Have? That's the name of the song. The songs are great. And the music was great too. It was a show on Broadway that starred Barbara Harris, who you may not think you know her. She did a bunch of very famous Broadway shows, but she was in Nashville. She was the one who sang It Don't Worry Me at the end of Nashville. And, if you're just curious, who did On a Clear Day before Barbara in the show? Okay, well, of course, I've seen all these musicals many, many times. Barbara is always fascinating, but I prefer Hello, Dolly to On a Clear Day. Though there's aspects of On a Clear Day I love too. It's about ESP, and I'm kind of into all the psychic phenomenon stuff. So it not only appeals to me because it's Barbra Streisand, it's a musical, and Vincent Minnelli directed it, but I also like the theme of it, of ESP and past and reincarnation. Kind of a big believer in reincarnation. But since this isn't any kind of religious or metaphysical show, we're not going to get into that here. Okay, so Barbara's doing these wonderful movies. Really, in the 70s, she was the one. She was the actor of the 70s to reckon with. Oh, God. The Way We Were. That was her big movie. I knew there was one that was bigger and better than the others. The Way We Were was a phenomenal success. And that was, of course, Robert Redford at his most gorgeous. Gorgeous, but Robert Redford took a very serious part, and he kept fighting to make his character less shallow than it was. Okay, so she got into the pop thing with her albums. She wanted to be contemporary. Her first 5 albums, which are, they're so good. I just can't stop listening to them. But, she wanted to be contemporary. She was still in her 20s. And here she's doing these old-fashioned musicals, and singing the Great American Songbook, thank God. But, she was young. So she starts her albums, start getting more poppy. Now, of course, Guilty, which is phenomenal. Barry Gibb produced, wrote most of the music, is great. But I do not like her pop years. God, there's two albums, Butterfly, and I can't even remember the second, are so bad. And every so often I listen to them again thinking, will I like it more? And no, I don't. It's like she kind of lost herself. She wasn't really a pop singer, somebody who is supposed to just sing on the beat. And pop has a lot to do with that. The disco stuff, of course, she did Enough Is Enough with Donna Summer, the disco queen. And it was very successful, right? Very. And she has to stay on the beat in order for the song to work. And she does that very well, but that really wasn't her thing. She interpreted music like all the great singers do. They interpret. Okay, then the Broadway album comes. See, I kind of didn't talk too much about her pop career. The Broadway album comes in. Oh my God, did that blow me away. I was still getting all Barbara's albums. I was still seeing all her movies. I was still getting whatever books came out. But there was like a disconnect with me, with this pop era. And of course, at that time, I was getting away from, I'm really, a Broadway baby, a Broadway musical baby. So I was getting away from the pop too. Not the 60s, I was very present, and the early 70s, but I was kind of getting more into actually the 1920s, the 1930s, the 1910s. Okay, so, but then the Broadway album comes now, and this is kind of famous for all Barbra fans. They know this, that the label would not do it. They go, Broadway? What are you kidding? You're a pop star now. You're contemporary. You can't do this now. This would be awful. This will ruin your career. Well, Barbara, and she talks about this, you tell her no, and that kind of what motivates her to do something. And that pretty much is how Yentl came about too. We're going to get to Yentl after the Broadway album though. Okay, so she does the Broadway album. And it is, of course, I don't know if it was the biggest success of her career, but it was phenomenally successful, which was great. And it brought Barbara back to the Great American Songbook, where she can interpret these wonderful songs. And she does. It's funny she doesn't talk about it much because she's thinking when she's singing. And she doesn't have to think when she's singing because the voice is so pure and perfect. So to get a voice, you know, it's funny to compare it to Aretha Franklin because their styles are so different. But Aretha also knew what she was singing. She wasn't just trying to sing a song and using the talent she has as a vocalist, which is phenomenal. No, she also understands the lyrics. So Barbara and Aretha, who both pretty much were the voices of the 60s, right? Who else? Well, Dusty Springfield. Is there anybody else? I mean, there were many, many great vocalists, but really Aretha Franklin and Barbra Streisand, they are, both of them are vocalists from the ages, you know, and they're still, you know, nothing. Other people will come around, they'll be wonderful too, but nothing will diminish Aretha and Barbara's talent and their place in the musical history. Okay, so now Yentl, the same thing. Barbara read the short story by Isaac Bear Sager, Yentl the Yeshiva Boy, and became fascinated with it, and wanted to make a movie of it. All right, well, who would say, here she's playing up like a teenage boy. She was well in her 40s at the time, a teenage boy, and she didn't want to make it a musical. Basically the only reason she did make it as a musical is she wouldn't get the funding if she did it as a drama. So wonderfully, and I don't know, and the music was by two of her closest friends, Alan and Marilyn Bergman. Well, I don't know who made the decision, but as opposed to her singing it, it's just her thoughts. Oh, it really works well. It's kind of a funny story. I actually took the day off from work when it opened. The premieres, you know, the big premieres with all the stars were already over. But when it was nationally distributed, it was at the Cinerama Dome here in Hollywood. And it was on a Thursday. And I saw it. And boy, did it blow me away. I mean, it really is, you know, this is the movie where obviously she stars. She directs, she writes the screenplay, she produces. She really, all that she learned. And this is why to me it's ironic that she didn't go to college, because she learned. She's such an intelligent person. Is there anybody who did as much as she did with her movies? Warren Beatty did Reds, but of course he didn't sing. There aren't many people. You know, Bradley Cooper directed A Star is Born and starred in it too. Star is Born. See, we keep going back to Judy. I just can't help myself. Boy, that songbook of Yentl, did I sing those songs? Beautiful, beautiful songs. And one of the songs, No Matter What Happens, it's funny that it didn't become like a gay theme, because it's really about, I don't care what other people think or say about me, I need to be true to myself. Kind of like I Will Survive, you know, Gloria Gaynor. But it never really became this gay anthem, but I kind of think of it that way. And anybody who needs to be themselves, but it doesn't go with what society wants, or what your parents want, or what your husband or your wife or your partner wants. But you have a calling inside, and you need to do what you need to do. Okay, and Yentl was very successful. It actually cost him his relationship, John Peters. They were going out. John Peters, who actually became one of the heads of Columbia Pictures, who produced A Star is Born with Barbara. A very controversial boyfriend in Barbra Streisand's life, for a few reasons, but we're not going to get into that. He didn't want her to do it, and she needed support. She needed people who believed in her visions, because her visions were very strong. Now, mind you, we all have thoughts, but we don't necessarily manifest them. She does. She wanted to act. She wanted to be a beautiful film actress. Now, of course, everybody laughed at her and said, "You're ugly. You'll never be who you want to be." Well, she just would not take no for an answer, which of course motivated her to become a very beautiful. I mean, she really redefined beauty, because people today, it's not just the model pretty. I mean, we like, visually, we like people who are easy on the eyeballs, right? But, the really, really popular people, Sammy Davis Jr., Dustin Hoffman, Barbra, they're not necessarily model beautiful, but they become beautiful in their talent. I'm going to also mention Bill Clinton in that, all right? Not physically a beautiful presence, but boy, they're just, what they have inside is so beautiful that their beauty comes out of them. All right, back to Barbra. So beautiful, and of course she became a fashion icon. She got very sophisticated very fast. You would think she was brought up in like Manhattan, but it was Brooklyn, and she wasn't brought up with wealth. She learned, though. She learned about style, and her style is beautiful, and of course her houses are very tasteful, really wonderful, and of course she speaks so eloquently. But this is the thing about Barbra Streisand that I just love about her. She never lost her Bucanese, as opposed to people who make it. Now I'm going to compare her with Diana Ross, who in the 70s, where we've already established that she was really the other actress in the role. But of course I have to mention Liza Minnelli too, because she did get the Academy Award for Cabaret. I believe it was 72, when Diana Ross was nominated for Lady Sings the Blues, which were two major films and two actresses who, A Star is Born with both. Liza, she did 3 films before, after Cabaret. She was, she finally made it. Same with Diana Ross, who had that solo career, and of course she had the career with the Supremes. All right, now, Barbra, I mean, it's not like us fans think that we can meet her, walking somewhere and just start talking about her and fawning over her. No, she's basically a shy person, and I don't know if I could actually talk to her. I think I'd be too intimidated talking to her. Okay, because she's just brilliant. She's very cautious using words in interviews. Very serious. She doesn't come across as funny as her friends say she is when the cameras are off and nobody's filming her. Suppose she's a very funny person. But we don't really see that in the interviews. But the neat thing about it is, all right, so she's talking about something so important, and you're really trying to go and understand it on this very deep level. Then she goes, you know what I mean? And it just humanizes her. In her Brooklyn Jewish accent, I just love it. Her concerts also, she has become so much more relaxed. I saw her in her first wave of concerts, where she was in her early 50s. I mean, it is impossible to describe how good she was. Like, you knew she'd be great, and it was actually better than that. But in reading since about those concerts, every word was rehearsed, every song was rehearsed, every move was rehearsed. And I also remember she would not start singing a song until everybody shut up. Well, this is Barbra Streisand, and she didn't do concerts. Oh my God, it was hard for us to shut up. Of course we'd shut up, and then she starts singing, and I mean, she's in perfect voice. Now she's done a bunch of concerts, and people are screaming all over, we love you, Babs! And she starts giggling. She's accepted that this is okay. She still talks about being very uncomfortable doing concerts, which is interesting to hear. I mean, something I heard her do just a few weeks ago, and she's still talking about her uncomfortability in doing live performances. But she seems not uncomfortable. Of course, she's a great actress. She doesn't seem uncomfortable at all. And she's responding, and she's doing much more comedy. She's a funny girl. She has a funny persona. Her comedies, she's a very gifted comedian, are really wonderful, and I love that about her now. But if you want to hear Barbra in a concert when she was at the peak of her vocal abilities, you want to get live at the Forum. That was, I believe she did it I think Carole King and James Taylor were also part of the concert to raise money for McGovern's presidency. He was the first president I voted for. And of course Nixon supposedly won by a landslide. But now I think, wait a second, maybe something was rigged. Why did McGovern lose that much? And this was the first time that 18-year-olds could vote. All right, but that's another story too. Okay, now the forum was put together very quickly. There's mistakes. She's singing. It's kind of sloppy, which is wonderful because she is so good. Now, hearing Barbra Streisand at the peak of her vocal ability is really something else, hearing her live. It's really something else. And it is so good. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it more than the concert albums now, though. I listen to all of it because I love her voice. And I love her the talking she does in between the songs. And of course, she now talks about her films, about, her career, which I can relate to very well. It's really wonderful. And I am one of a zillion people who go to her concerts that have known Barbra for all these decades. And she knows it. And I believe she is doing these concerts for us, for the old fans who have been with her through the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s. Now we're going into the 220s. We love her. Okay, so now the films. I talked about how successful her film was. This is a book, The Films of Barbra Streisand. Now, isn't that an original title? I'm only kidding. Not very original at all, but it's exactly what it is. It's only her films, like all these books here, are the films of. Okay, and I'm going to comment on some. Okay, we've commented on...